Yo, Skinny, let's go. It's time for another 10-8 round podcast. Joining you from filthy Philadelphia, I, your humble co-host, Zach, am joined by John Boy down there in sunny Fort Lauderdale. John Boy, the excitement level, it's rising like the sea. How you feeling?
Yeah, man, this one, the excitement level is through the roof. We are in for some absolute chaos and some absolute violence this week. It's going to be a joy to cover. It's going to be a joy to cover.
Ooh, I had to crack a CBD to calm my nerves.
Yeah, I had to crack a latte over here to, loosen up a little bit because I had to
do it. I'm amped. I'm jacked. I gotta, I had to fucking crack the CBD. Oh, there we go. Edges off. UFC 274 coming at you hot. Where are we this weekend? Are we in Arizona?
We are in Arizona. I believe it's Phoenix.
It's a dry heat.
Yep.
We're like an oven.
Arizona, the weekend of Cinco de Mayo. Right?
Getting after it.
There's going to be a little Mexican flair in the arena. This is honestly the perfect card to have Cinco de Mayo weekend.
It is.
Absolute fireworks.
Yeah. And listen, for the listeners at home, for the legions of fans listening, you got Cinco de Mayo, you got Friday, you got Saturday fights in Arizona. All right. Pace yourself, put some water in there. All right. Don't be afraid to hit a nap if you need it. Don't burn out. And by Saturday afternoon, you're not ready. Or by Sunday morning, you're unemployed. Pace yourself, know your limits. It's important to do that.
Yeah. This is going to be a 5-rounder.
This is a 5-rounder. This is a main event.
Championship rounds here.
Yeah. This is a main event. So make sure your cardio is on point. Because if it's not, you're gassing out in the first and you're getting knocked out in the second.
Facts.
Can't see it like that. So what do you think? What do you think about just getting right into it?
Yeah, man. Let's get into this bad boy. We got a lot to cover. And we'll go straight from the top, baby. Main event. Pure violence, doesn't get much better than this one. 155-pound belt on the line, UFC 274. Justin Gaethje, for his second attempt at the title, is going up against Charles do Bronx Oliveira. And for the listeners at home who maybe missed last week due to the birth of a child or the death of a close relative, and you didn't listen last week, there's a gentleman's wager on the line. Yeah, there was a gentleman's wager. You're gonna have to remind me of it because last week was a blur to me.
Last week was a blur. And if you haven't listened last week and you're listening this week, go back and check out the episode we did with Timmy Green, Timbo Slice, local up-and-comer in the MMA scene in Philadelphia. Timmy got on, had a great time with us. A kid who's truly in it for love of the game. And Timmy was the catalyst for us to make the second ever gentleman's wager on the 10-8 round podcast. I believe there is a crisp Hamilton's on the 20, right?
Yes, that checks out.
No, I think Hamilton's on the 10. Who the hell's on the 20? Well, either way, whichever United States historical figure is on the 20, it's not me just yet, but we're working on it. Whichever historical figure is on the 20, there's a crisp one on the line. John Boy siding with do Bronx, Charles Oliveira. I siding with Justin Gaethje. Winner take all. Winner take home that crisp $20 bill.
Yeah. Yep. It's Jackson. It's Jackson.
Jackson's that's it.
I had to do a little bit of research, but we got it. It's my boy Jackson.
Two grown men did not know who was on the $20 bill. Mark that one down.
Yep. I mean, you're going to be getting information and betting information from me in a little bit. So that's never a good sign. But hey, that's because I'm only stacking Benjamins over here, right?
That's right. Because we stack Benjis. We don't deal with $20 bills. All right. We're flying around the world. We're wearing ice on the neck. We don't deal with 20s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, we did make a gentleman's wager on that fight. Charles Oliveira, did we? I don't think we decided or asked you who you thought the favorite was in that bout. Did we last week?
I don't think so, but I'm going to say right now that Vegas probably has Oliveira as the favorite.
Yeah. So Oliveira is minus 180. Justin Gaethje could be had for plus 150. This is kind of an idea of how back and forth I've been on this fight since last week. Man, this is a great fight. This is a 5-round fight. The over and under is 1.5 rounds, which on 5-round fights, it's usually 2.5 rounds, but Vegas is bumping it down to 1.5 just because of how much violence could incur between these two individuals. Last week I was with Oliveira for the sole fact that there's more than one way for him to win this fight. He can do this in the grappling department. He can do it in the striking department. He could pretty much win this in every facet of the game. That's just kind of how Charles Oliveira, how he wins, man. He's super diverse. He can do it all. But man, is Justin Gaethje durable? He hits like a truck. And that's something that he could exploit in this matchup with Oliveira. Last week, I did jump the gun on Oliveira, and as fight week is starting to approach us, your boy is jumping ship right now.
Oh boy,
I'm jumping ship for the viewers. I'm gonna take Justin Gaethje here at plus 150. Our gentleman's bet remains, but I don't want to give false information to our viewers because I respect them so much. I'm going to be on Justin Gaethje here. I watched a couple interviews. I did a little bit more, diving in the research, and something inside of me, my gut feeling, is Justin Gaethje is going to win the 155-pound strap this weekend.
So we got Gaethje coming in with a 23-3 record. We got Oliveira coming in with a 32-8 record. But what's really interesting, so 32 wins for Charles Oliveira, 20 of them by submission.
Yeah.
23 wins for Justin Gaethje, 19 of them by knockout or technical knockout.
Mm-hmm. That
is a man that is committed to his violence. And even more staggering, Justin Gaethje averages 7.5 strikes landed per minute. That's insane. That is staggering.
He probably absorbs close to that too, I would imagine.
He probably does. And I don't know if you saw earlier, Joe Lauzon, who's on this card, who I think trains with Gaethje or maybe trains at the same gym that Gaethje trains at out there in Colorado. Joe was quoted as saying that Justin Gaethje would light himself on fire just to burn his opponent.
Extremely accurate.
That is a palpable image of violence.
Yeah, no, that's one way to really sum up Justin Gaethje and kind of his style of fighting. His only losses, he's been finished. He was subbed once, KO'd twice. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of X's and O's that we could go over here. They have, some similar common opponents. They both fought Dustin Poirier. That was Oliveira's last title defense. Gaethje lost, I believe it was a 4th round TKO. Poirier when they fought. But honestly, the MMA math isn't going to work on this one, I don't think. I think that, it's a stylistic thing here. And it kind of what it came down to last week for me was durability. And it's going to come back again this week. We're going to see a reoccurring pattern, and I'm going to side with the durability here. I think that Gaethje is the clearly more durable fighter. And I think this is going to stay on the feet. And I think over the course of, I think it's going to go later. I think it's going to go higher than 1.5. I think it'll go into the 3rd round. I think Gaethje's durability is going to be the X factor here. And I'm going to see a late finish, 3rd, 4th round for Justin Gaethje here.
Yeah. I mean, if you're sitting at home and you want to do the MMA math, good luck. They've both fought Poirier, with Oliveira beating Poirier and Gaethje losing to Poirier. That was his 2nd loss ever. His first was a knockout at the hands of the Underground King, Eddie Alvarez, Philly stand up. But they both have wins over Tony Ferguson. Gaethje coming in with not many losses, but Oliveira has been I mean, and I was looking at the Share Dog breakdown earlier. If you look at the earlier part of Charles Oliveira's career, he looks like an average to middling fighter. You know, he lost to Cowboy, he lost to Tony Pettis, he lost to Frankie Edgar, he lost to Cub Swanson, all fairly early on in his career. His last loss in 2017 was to Paul Felder.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, but since then, right, it looks like he went on a Masvidal-esque vision quest and came out of the jungle just a completely different fighter. Hasn't lost since 2018 and has fought, you know, legit guys, starting with Clay Guida in 18, Jim Miller, Kevin Lee, Tony Ferguson, Michael Chandler, Dustin Poirier. I mean, he's been fighting legit guys for the past 5 years and has not lost. So the MMA math here is staggeringly difficult. You know, the one big notable fight that Gaethje has that Oliveira doesn't have is Habib Nurmagomedov, who of course submitted Justin Gaethje for his third loss. I don't know how to work out this MMA math. You know, Oliveira never fought Habib. Gaethje lost to Habib, so that's a wash. They both have wins over Ferguson. They both have wins over Michael Chandler. You know, I think the big place maybe that we can look at the differences is I think everybody would agree that Oliveira was not winning until he was winning against Michael Chandler. You know, that round one of that fight was a tough one for Oliveira. You know, he had to dig deep to get that win, I believe, in the second round.
Yeah, he did. He got caught really early, dropped. And, you know, it looked like Michael Chandler was going to be the UFC champion, start up at the second round, and he gets caught. Oliveira catches Chandler and knocks him out. I think the same could honestly be said about Gaethje, like kind of the crazy run that you're saying Oliveira has been on, which is rightfully so. He's rattled 10 straight wins off in the UFC, which is, you know, pretty amazing. And you could make arguably the deepest division in the UFC, you know, at lightweight. But I think Gaethje has made a lot of improvement to his game. I mean, he still is the type of fighter who engages in a firefight and it's an absolute bloodbath. But I think it's a little bit more strategic and there's a lot of game plan involved now, more so than before. Trevor Whitman, his boxing coach and overall head coach, is a excellent boxing coach. This guy is a world champion boxing coach. He's the coach for Kamaru Usman, Rose Namajunas, who's the next fight on the card. And I think they're going to have the right game plan for Oliveira. They're not going to, you know, get along the fence where they're going to be able to put him into some, you know, some unbecoming positions that Gaethje wouldn't really want to be in. I think he's going to keep this at boxing range. And I think he's going to make it ugly. And I think he's going to do what he does best and, you know, force the dog out of Oliveira. And it's going to be who has the higher durability and who wants it more. And I think at this particular point in time, I'm going to side with Justin Gaethje.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's hard to argue with that analysis and that breakdown, right? I mean, Gaethje's he's just built different. You know, I've seen the man fight live. It's an absolute war when he goes in there. You know, he has a mentality that is completely different than a lot of other people's. You know, and two things that are funny to me about this fight, you know, number one, if you've ever seen photographs of Justin Gaethje and Charles Dubronx Oliveira outside of the cage, right? Like just living their normal everyday life, like they're out getting a cup of coffee in the morning. These guys look like they would spend their weekends playing Dungeons and Dragons, maybe assessing the state of their comic book collection, catching up on the latest Marvel TV shows. You know, these guys look like they look, first of all, there's no shame in that game. That's actually how I spend my weekends. But, you know, these guys look like dorks. And I say that with all due respect, they look like a couple of dorks. to know that once they rip off those Clark Kent nerd glasses and they get in there and they are capable of extreme violence is one of my favorite things about the sport of mixed martial arts, is that looking at these guys, nobody would believe you that they are some of the most dangerous men walking on 2 feet right now. The second thing that absolutely cracks me up about MMA is the different kinds of athletes you get. You know, if you look at somebody like George St. Pierre, right? Arguably one of the greatest mixed martial artists of all time, truthfully was the Bruce Lee embodiment of be water, my friend, very much a peaceful warrior. If you were to compare him to Justin Gaethje, who Timbo Slice filled us in last night, his coach tried to get advice from Gaethje's coach, and Gaethje's coach said, when he goes in there, his goal is to just kill another human being, right? You're dealing with two very different mentalities and the same result. One of my favorite things about MMA is the absolute different mentalities you get that produce some incredible fighters. There is no one size fits all system to how you approach this sport.
Yeah, no, that's what makes it the greatest sport on earth. There's no carbon copy plan that, you know, that you have to abide by. There's nothing. I mean, you can emulate other guys, but everybody does it differently. Everybody has a different approach. There's so many, you know, different specialties that you can be great in. And Gaethje is just an absolute head case. And he's honestly probably the best head case ever in the UFC. And that's a very bold statement because of how many there have been. But in terms of a guy who literally will light himself on fire just to burn you, he embodies that so much. Every single Gaethje fight is must-watch TV. I saw a stat coming into this card to give you an idea of how loaded this card is. Between every single fighter on this card, there's 99 performance bonuses have been handed out between all of the fighters on this card. So
that's heavy duty.
Absolutely loaded. Gaethje, you know, responsible for a lot of those. But yeah, I mean, this main event is juicy. So you can expect just pure violence. I think Gaethje's going to go to work with that leg kick too. Watch for that leg kick. I know Oliveira throws like that front kick, which could give Gaethje some issues. But this is Gaethje's time, and you know, I'm pumped to see this one.
Hard for me to disagree, and we'll see how the second ever gentleman's bet plays out. But that's just the tip of the violent iceberg, because we got another title fight on this card.
Yeah.
We got Thug Rose Namajunas going up against Carla Esparza.
Yeah.
That's a crackerjack right there.
Yep. Do you have a favorite? Who you think the favorite in that bout is?
I believe that Thug Rose has got to be the favorite.
Yeah. So we're going back to a rematch of the Ultimate Fighter. These two met at the Ultimate Fighter finale. Rose was also a favorite in that bout, and she ended up being submitted by Carla Esparza. Carla Esparza became the first strawweight champion, I believe, in UFC history.
Yes.
And then she was, you know, eventually she had her next bout. She lost to Joanna. Joanna champion went on, you know, a historic run after that. So this is a rematch. These two have history. Rose Namajunas is the -215 favorite. Carla Esparza could be had for +170. Do you have a lean in who you think is going to win in this bout?
I am more confident in this fight than in any other fight that Rose Namajunas is going to win. It's, if you look at, so we go back 8 years. We go back to 2014. Carla Esparza submits Thug Rose in the Ultimate Fighter finale. She then loses her next fight to JJ champion Joanna Jędrzejczyk. And then if we look at the career since then, I think we're looking at two very different trajectories of career, two different caliber fighters. So Rose 11-4, Carla Esparza 18-6 doesn't tell us the whole story. That Joanna champion run is really, you know, really finds its unseating at the hands of Thug Rose Namajunas, who's beaten Joanna twice, once via TKO. She's also beaten Jessica Andrade. She's also beaten Michelle Waterson. She's also beaten Weili Zhang twice, once by KO in what had to be one of the most jaw-dropping knockouts, I think, in UFC history. Dropped her with a head kick and just flatlined her, just absolutely flatlined her. I think that Carla probably had a little bit of experience on Rose in the grappling department in the Ultimate Fighter finale 8 years ago. I think since then, the Thug Rose has been on a tear. And I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I believe in that Ultimate Fighter finale. Rose Namajunas still sporting long hair.
Yes, she was.
Yeah, no, see, that's not even the same fighter.
Different person.
That's not even the same fighter. And for those uninitiated to the Thug Rose game, Thug Rose gave an interview after she buzz cutted her head, said that she was sick of that hair getting in her face when she was training and fighting. And she said, fuck hair. I'm done with it. I don't need it. And she has been rocking the G.I. Jane crop high and tight ever since. And she has been an absolute phenom. She has in her last, I don't even know how many fights. There's only 2 losses that would really stand out. One to Karolina Kowalkiewicz. It is what it is. And one to Jessica Andrade. And for those who haven't seen it, Rose looks to be looking for a submission, or she's looking for a clinch. She's looking to get sort of some grappling control over Jessica Andrade. Andrade picks her up and slams her onto the canvas of the octagon, which knocks her out. The fall actually knocks her out. I don't know if I'd go as far as to call that a fluke, but I would say that 7 or 8 times out of 10, that drop does not knock out Rose Namajunas. And I think she was doing pretty well against Andrade before that drop body slam happened. And obviously her next fight, she avenged that loss to Jessica Andrade and beat her via decision.
Split.
Split decision. She beat her via split decision, but avenged that loss.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at Esparza, I mean, Esparza's had a great career. She's a phenomenal fighter. I do not believe in 2022 she's on the level that Thug Rose is on.
And see, this right here is why I love the sport of UFC. Here at the 10-8 podcast, when we pick a fighter, we're going to sail into the sunset with that fighter, or we are going to sink to the bottom of the ocean with them. So we're going to pick them and we're going to stand by them. We're not going to be dicey and on the fence with who we pick here. And I'm going with Carla Esparza here. I will be betting Carla Esparza at plus 170. Over the course of 5 rounds, everything that you mentioned, it's true about, Rose being a different fighter from where she was when they had fought previously for the Ultimate Fighter finale. But I think in this stylistic matchup, Rose has glaring issues in the takedown defense department. And that is Carla Esparza's bread and butter. We saw Weili Zhang take down Rose multiple times in the last fight, and Rose, after being taken down for the remainder of that round, fought off of her back. There wasn't much urgency for her to really get up when she was in those spots. I think there's going to be a chip on Esparza's shoulder. We know that Rose's what's the word I'm looking for? Her ambition and kind of her drive has been questioned in the past, with her becoming content and not really feeling the drive anymore. I think Esparza matches up well. I think what Esparza does well, Rose has problems with. I'm going to go with Carla Esparza here at plus 170.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we are 2 guys who have both been fans of the sport for a long time. We can reach different conclusions using the same logic, and that's the fun part about MMA. I don't know. When I look at Carla's record, I think her L's are suspect. I think a lot of her wins are by decision. A lot of her losses are by decision. It's just when I look at her breakdown, I don't think that, Weili took down Rose. Absolutely. Weili also lost that fight.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there was a little bit of controversy in that L, and some people thought that maybe Weili had won that fight because of the takedowns, and perhaps the MMA has not adjusted to scoring takedowns appropriately, but all the same, the W went to Rose. So, Rose's takedown defense is suspect, and I'm hard pressed to pick against a grappler. You know that. But I feel pretty confident with Rose here. But I guess we're going to see. I guess this is going to, either way, I think this is going to be a fun fight. Put it that way.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be a good fight. I just think Esparza is the type of person who she's going to shoot for that takedown from start to finish. I don't think she's going to want to engage her in any of the striking exchanges like a Weili Zhang would do or a Joanna would do, because that's kind of their bread and butter as well. They're fighting fire with fire when they fight Rose. And I think Esparza is going to go a completely different way about it than, any of the challengers that Rose has really fought. I see a path to victory for Carla here. So at the plus 170 number, that's juicy enough for me to take a shot.
Hey, and fair enough, and take a shot. And for our listeners at home, if you haven't watched Thug Rose kick Weili Zhang's head clean off her shoulders, it'll only take about 20 seconds. You owe it to yourself. Look that one up on the YouTube. Give it a watch. It is, I think that might actually be where the famous meme of Rogan, DC, and John Anik grabbing each other at the table comes from. I think it actually was from. Do you have different info?
I do have different info.
Where does it come from?
It actually comes from the Drakkar Klose Beneil Dariush fight.
Is that right?
It is, yes. The only reason I know this was because I was watching something where it was brought up. I don't know if it was a recent Rogan interview, but it was that back and forth between Drakkar Klose and Beneil Dariush, where Drakkar Klose has Beneil Dariush hurt, then Beneil Dariush has Drakkar Klose hurt, and then eventually it goes back and forth, and Beneil Dariush knocks Drakkar Klose out. And I believe that is where that meme originates from.
That's interesting, and I'm not going to doubt you, but I would have bet United States currency that it came from that head kick.
No, absolutely do your due diligence here, viewers, and you can
let us know.
You can check it out for yourselves and let us know below in the comments who's right. Back.
Or listen, you can let us know, because I'm pretty sure soon our legal department may be launching 10-8 social media.
Big news.
We might be on the gram soon. But will we be on the gram soon enough for me to share the picture that I have with Donald Cowboy Cerrone before this fight card? I don't know. I don't know that answer. Maybe.
Stay tuned.
Maybe not. Guess we're going to have to find out. Well, my heart rate's already jacked, and we're only 2 fights in.
Yeah.
And we got another absolute crackerjack coming our way. Iron Michael Chandler versus El Kikui, Tony Ferguson. Do my eyes deceive me? Is that fight really going to happen?
There are very few times in my life when I see a Justin Gaethje fight card and I'm more excited for another fight on the card. But something about the boogeyman, something about Tony Ferguson and that aura that he embodies, and just kind of the way he goes about. He's one of a kind. There's nothing like him. He's the type of guy you listen to for 15 minutes and you go, this guy's batshit crazy. And then 25 minutes in, you go, maybe he's onto something. And then another 15 minutes go by and you're like, this guy's an absolute fucking genius. He's an absolute anomaly. Must see TV every time he steps into the ring. And he's going up against a guy in Michael Chandler, who is set out for UFC gold. I mean, it's been his dream since entering the UFC since day one. Talk about a 16-month span of fighting the who's who and the legit guys in the division. First fight, Dan Hooker, if I'm correct.
Yep.
He then was an alternate weigh-in for the Habib Gaethje fight.
Yep.
Then he fights Charles Oliveira for the belt. Then he fights Justin Gaethje. And now he's lined up to fight Tony Ferguson, all in a 16-month span.
That's a tough paper route.
Yeah. So this guy was not kidding when he said he was ready for the who's who. He's stepping up to the plate here. Do you have an idea of where the odds makers are feeling on this?
The odds makers have got to be with Iron Michael Chandler.
They are, and they are indeed a little bit heavier than I would have expected. Chandler opened up around -400. which is pretty crazy to say that, Tony Ferguson would be around a plus 300 underdog in any fight. But, with the recent decline of Ferguson's career, he's sitting at a plus 285 underdog. Michael Chandler could be had for minus 385. I know we spoke about this a little bit before, but who are you leaning in? Who you leaning into on this one?
It harms me with regret, but I'm leaning towards Michael Chandler.
Yeah.
I am. And if this was 3, maybe 4 years ago, maybe I wouldn't be. But I'm starting to suspect that at 38 years old, the mysticism of El Kikui is starting to fade a little bit.
Yeah.
I think age comes for us all, and I think maybe it has started to show up for Tony Ferguson. He's on a 3-fight losing skid. The two men fighting for the strap, Justin Gaethje and Charles Oliveira, both hold wins over El Kikui, as well as Beneil Dariush holds a win over El Kikui, and that's his last 3. Looking at his resume is something insane, right? He's got wins over Cowboy Cerrone, Anthony Pettis, Kevin Lee, RDA. He's got some of the most exciting, interesting fights in UFC history. He has a unique fighting style of none. I can't figure out what his fighting style is. I don't know what it is. I've never seen it before. It's weird. It's awkward. He changes stances constantly. It is just truly a marvel to be seen. He's 25-6. Michael Chandler's 22-7. But I really do. I think the staunch meanness, the innate meanness of Michael Chandler, who is a wrestler by trade with heavy hands, big shots. I think that's just going to be too much for El Kikui.
Yeah. Mr. Shades and Blades, Tony Ferguson. When I hear the guy talk, I watched his interview and I'm like, something about him, like his self-belief. I don't know if it's faked or what it is. I don't think it is. I really do think he believes in himself and he is that, type of crazy. Michael Chandler has a lot of power. He's going to come out hot. He's definitely like a 1 to 2 round fighter. That's kind of where you see his best work. He gets off early and often. And then kind of when he gets outside of the first round, it's kind of fair game. You saw that in the Gaethje fight and you saw that in the Oliveira fight. The Hooker fight didn't make it out of the first round, so we didn't have an opportunity to see Chandler get to the second round.
Did the Hooker fight make it out of the first minute?
No, that was absolutely, I think that was like a 30-second fight.
Yeah, he starched him.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great win when he did it, but kind of seeing where Hooker has been in his last fights, I don't want to say it. Yeah, he's been on a huge decline, so I don't want to say it knocks that win, because that was kind of the win that started, the snowball effect and decline of Hooker's career. I want to agree with you in the sentiment that, Michael Chandler is probably the rightful favorite in this fight, but something is telling me Tony Ferguson at plus 380. We're doubting this guy. And, this might be another one of those situations, like I had mentioned last week, where we just wait for this thing to get out of the first round. I think Chandler's definitely going to win the first round. So I wouldn't put a pre-bet in on this one, because Chandler's 9 times out of 10 is going to win this first round. And if Ferguson survives the first round, he might be a live betting opportunity. If you could get him at like a plus 500, plus 600 number, where you're sporting a 5 to 1, 6 to 1 number on a guy who is known for pretty much his cardio and his durability. He's never really been finished. When he lost to Gaethje in the 5th round, Herb Dean stopped that fight. It was the correct decision, but he didn't get dropped. He didn't go unconscious. It was, the last fights that he lost was losing position and kind of being outpointed. I don't know if Chandler's going to finish him here. He could finish him in the first round, But if he doesn't get him out of that first round, look for the boogeyman to maybe make some waves in round 2 and 3. Let's see how that first round plays out before we make a play on that fight. That's kind of how I'm going to approach this one.
No, look, you're absolutely right. And again, and I temper everything I say with, when MMA karma is on your side, it could be your night. And that mysticism that surrounds Tony Ferguson, it won't let him die. And if you look at the career of Tony Ferguson, if you were to pull back a little bit from the snapshot of his last 3 losses, he lost to Michael Johnson in 2012. Can you tell me when the next time he lost a fight was?
The last time that he lost a fight.
So from 2012 on, after 2012, that loss to Michael Johnson. When was the next time that Tony Ferguson lost a fight?
So he went on what, an 11-fight win streak.
Yeah.
He was even money to fight Khabib, and then he tripped and fell
on a microphone cord.
On a microphone when UFC was still on Fox.
Yep.
For the ESPN move, and he blew out his ACL, MCL, and got the fight taken away. And Khabib ends up fighting Ally Aquinta for the belt.
For the belt. And history is made that night because John and I meet in the stands of the Khabib Iaquinta fight.
Correct. So essentially the origin of the 10-8 podcast was that fight.
Was that fight, yeah.
In the Barclays Premier Center in Brooklyn. I'm trying to think then I'm trying to think if Ferguson fought Oliveira or he fought Gaethje next.
He fought Gaethje next.
Okay, so he fought
2020.
Gaethje. Okay, so he fought Gaethje in 2020.
8 years. He went 8 years undefeated.
Yeah, I mean, people were saying that he was, essentially Habib's kryptonite. We never got to see that play out. I would have loved to see that play out. I know there's a lot of strong emotion on that. I know, that Khabib is kind of, he's in kind of his own league. He's his own entity. It's really uncomparable type of guy, seeing what he did to a guy like Justin Gaethje.
He is incomparable, but my question for you is a little bit different.
Okay.
So not looking at the 8 years where he didn't lose, but looking at the last 2 where he's lost 3.
Yeah.
Beneil Dariush, Charles Oliveira, Justin Gaethje, 3 losses in a row. Looking at those losses, do you think the hype around Khabib was worth it? Khabib Ferguson, do you think that fight would have lived up to the hype?
I understand what you're saying, but this kind of comes down to like the stylistic matchup thing, right? Because we're kind of going back to like Khabib's not going to knock out Ferguson, right?
No.
And Ferguson is known to have an extremely active guard. He slashes people with elbows from bottom, and it was kind of something like we've never really seen Khabib get cut. We've never really seen Khabib, get really hurt. I mean, there people said that Michael Johnson stunned him and stuff like that, but Ferguson presented a challenge that was different than a lot of other guys just from a stylistic standpoint. But I understand what you're saying. When you're saying a guy, Beneil Dariush, is going to control you for 3 rounds and 30-27 you to a UD, it's laughable to say that guy's going to be competitive against, arguably the greatest of all time. With that being said, I still would have loved to see that fight. The MMA gods just did not want that. I think the thing was scheduled 4 to 5 times. And
it was our white whale. It was our Moby Dick.
Yeah.
And if you're listening at home and you're a new fan to the sport, you've listened to the smooth, velvety sounds of John Boy and I's voices, and you've decided, I love this sport and what these guys bring to it. You got to know that for years, the true loyal fans of this sport begged, prayed, lit altar sacrifices to see Tony Ferguson versus Habib Nurmagomedov, and it never happened. Habib retired, and when he did, Captain Ahab, we went down to the bottom of the sea. We did not get that fight. And you're right, hindsight is always 20/20, right? Looking now at what this is, But, you know, to lose to Beneil Dariush in the way that he did, it makes me think, what would he have done to Khabib? But that's the fun thing about Tony Ferguson, is you never know what he's going to do until he's in the fight, because he has no fighting style. He's just a mystic. I don't know. God's talking to him in his ear during the fight, and he does weird shit and it works. Yeah. But I gotta wonder what would have been, and we'll never know now, but I gotta wonder.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people share this opinion, that it's the greatest fight in UFC history that never happened.
Yeah.
You know, El Kikui on that run was absolutely absurd.
Yeah.
He was definitely one of the most feared guys in the division. Nobody really wanted to fight him. You got to think, after that knee surgery, you know, what that did to him, because he's really never looked right since that fight.
Yep.
He's 38 years old now. You know, nobody can really beat the tails of time, especially in the UFC. But he's being a little bit disrespected, I think, from an odds standpoint. I get the Michael Chandler, you know, love, and I understand. I do believe he's the rightful favorite. But something tells me when you add a little bit of that Tony Ferguson unknown element, it kind of makes me take a stab on a 3-1. But let's watch how that first round turns out. It's going to be absolute fireworks. You know, Tony Ferguson's a fan favorite, man. You're going to hear pop in the crowd. Michael Chandler is going to get boos. You could be the nicest, best guy in the world, but you're going to get booed if you're fighting Tony Ferguson. That's just how much the people love him. People have deemed him, quote unquote, the people's champion. And it's weekend of Cinco de Mayo. I don't know, man. There's some aura in the air here where I could see Tony Ferguson doing some fucking weird shit, landing some creepy elbows or something. Maybe something where they like stop the fight in like the third round because the doctor comes in and Chandler's cut up or something just like bloody. That. I could see something just absolutely bizarre happening. And something I just kind of want to bet him. This is more of like a head, this is more of a heart, not brain a function here. Let's see how that first round plays out, though.
And to be clear for the fans at home, I am rooting for Tony Ferguson.
Oh, I am too.
I am rooting for El Kikui.
Yeah.
All the way. I will go to the bottom of the ocean with that ship. And to back your argument a little bit, Chandler's got 7 losses. He is not a phenom. He's lost to Patricio Pitbull, Eddie Alvarez. He's got 2 losses to Will Brooks, and those were all in the Bellator cage. He is 1-2 in the UFC.
Exactly.
He may be a strong 1-2. He may be a tough 1-2, and he is, right? He's a Mizzou wrestler who's mean and he's nasty and he's got heavy fucking hands. There's no argument there. But he's beatable. He is very beatable. And a guy like Tony Ferguson, I don't know. If I were a big dog and looking for a big dog bet, if I was out on the hunt, this might be where I'd lean. This might be where I would lean. And I've got to give it up. I've got to give a 10-8 nod to John Boy, who told you last week, and we'll recap this in round 2, who told you last week, watch the Cheeto Font fight, because Font's always going to win round 1. But if he doesn't finish it, we're looking at a different fight. And could not have been more correct about that. And if you listened and bet Cheeto after round 1, I'd bet you won some goddamn money. So I'll be watching this one for round 1.
Yeah.
I'll be standing Tony like I always do.
Yeah. This is a similar, a similar issue or a similar fight as the Font Vera one, except it's a 3-rounder.
Yeah.
So, like the championship rounds, if this was a 5-round fight, I believe Tony Ferguson would have more respect from the odds makers. I don't know, man, when Chandler gets out of the first round, he's a different guy in the second and third round. I mean, I don't know what it is, if that lactic acid builds up in those muscles, because that man looks like he is on, some fucking HGH or I'm not going to, say anything. You can just look at his body. The guy is
inflated.
He is absolutely ripped. He might be the most jacked guy in the UFC. It's honestly absurd, kind of his body composition. I I don't know, man. Look for Ferguson to slash that boy open. I don't know. Something's telling me that Ferguson's live in this fight. And I'm really, really curious to see if he can make it out of that first round. And something's telling me he's going to.
I mean, I think the movie Predator tells us one thing and one thing only that we should always remember. If it bleeds, you can kill it.
I watched that bad boy the other week, so you're giving me chills right now because it's lining up, and that's oof. Watch a stop if a blood round 3 stoppage comes. You heard it here first. That's all I'm going to say.
And we're listening.
That's my final note. I don't think we've talked about this fight too long because I don't think you could talk about this fight too long. That's just how great of a fight it is. This is the fight I'm looking forward to the most on the card.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Especially because after that, it looks like we got to talk about something that just really confused me, which is Shogun Hua versus Ovince Prue. I don't know. I, for one, cannot figure out why this is on the main card.
Yeah. This is definitely the one that sticks out to you on the main card. That's, the least desirable of all 5 fights. This is a 205 light heavyweight rematch. I believe you said it was going back from 2014.
2014. So this is a rematch, much like Thug Rose and Carla Esparza. This is a rematch 8 years in the making. However, unlike Rose and Esparza, who are still in their early 30s, Shogun Hua is 40 years old. Ovince Prue is 39. Ovince Prue has lost his last 2 fights. Before that, he beat Alonzo Minefield. Before that, he lost to Ben Rothwell when he made a short jaunt to heavyweight. Shogun Hua lost to Paul Craig via submission. He beat Big Nog. He lost to Paul Craig, beat Tyson Pedro, lost to Anthony Smith, beat Gian Vellante. These 2 men have one thing in common, or 2 things in common. They both beaten Gian Vellante. They both beaten Corey Anderson. He has 2 wins over Shogun has 2 wins over Big Nog, and that was obviously a long-standing rivalry those 2 had. I mean, look, it'll be a fun fight. I think we can expect a finish. I know Mauricio Shogun Hua is a fan favorite, has been a fan favorite. This fight might have really excited me in 2016, maybe 2015. But even then, Shogun had been around the game for 10 years. Even then, you were wondering, like, how long is he really going to do this for? Yeah. Now, this could be a retirement fight for either of these guys. Ovince Prue, a highly touted prospect years ago, had played football at the University of Tennessee, I believe, before transitioning to MMA. He was a prospect who just kind of never really got his feet under him. Lost to Glover Teixeira, who is standing up for the old guys and winning one for the old dudes. Glover Teixeira is your current champion at 205 when he's not eating pudding in the nursing home. But he lost to Glover Teixeira. Then he went on and lost to John Jones. Then he lost to Jimmy Manuwa, lost one to the bricklayer, Alir Latifi. Ovince Prue is a guy that had all the promise in the world and just kind of never put it together. Shogun Hua is a guy who I believe his career dates back to the Pride days. I believe Shogun Hua fought in Pride. Look, I'm going to watch it. I don't know. But maybe if you got to take a bathroom break, maybe if you got to grab a Bud Latte or got to grab yourself a Killcliff CBD, 25 milligrams. I don't know. What's your lean on this one, John Boy? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't, with kind of the rest of the card, this one makes it extra like anticlimactic where you're not, at the edge of your seat to see this one. Ovince has been knocked out in his last 2 fights. His last one was at heavyweight. The second to last one was Jamal Hill, who's an absolute monster. Not to mention right now at light heavyweight, that guy is a serious problem for that division. I think the competition that Ovince Prue has fought is at a higher level than what Shogun has been fighting. So for that reason solely, I'm going to lean with Ovince Prue. I believe the percentage of fighters who won in the previous fight to the rematch, I believe that their winning percentage is over 70%. I see this playing out kind of similar, where these two guys are going to stand and bang. It's going to be kind of, a durability thing. I'm going to side with the minus 245 favorite and Ovince Prue. This should be Shogun's last fight. And honestly, it could be Ovince Prue's last fight as well, like you had mentioned. Hey, I mean, I hope these boys bang it out and it's at least exciting.
That's it. And I mean, look, Shogun is a legend of MMA, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, he's an absolute legend. I don't know that I'd give Ovince Prue the legend moniker, but is definitely a legit guy, is definitely a stand and bang guy. Look, if you like MMA, you're going to watch this fight 10 times out of 10. But neither one of these guys is, nor should they be, in anywhere near a conversation for who's who in the 205-pound division. They are at the tail end of their careers. They both had good careers, but at this point, neither one of those guys is fighting for a strap anytime soon.
Yeah, no, absolutely. These guys are looking to go out on good terms, and may the best man win on that night.
Well, speaking of guys in their late 30s who might be on their way out of the sport of MMA, our curtain jerker, which also in normal times probably would not make sense on the main card here, but may make sense because I have a sneaking suspicion as to why it's there. We're looking at probably my personal favorite fighter of all time, Donald Cowboy Cerrone versus Joe Lozon, which look, these Cowboys 39 years old, Joe is 37. Cowboys coming in with a 36-16 record, Joe with a 28-15 record. This stacks up very much the same way that OSP versus Shogun stacks up, except that I have a sneaking suspicion that this is going to be Cowboy Cerrone's last dance in the UFC. A career that has been just dynamite, but Cowboy has lost his last 5 fights. He lost 4 of them by knockout or TKO, and in there he has won no contest with Nico Price. Cowboy, who is just down to fight anytime, any place, anywhere, does not matter who, what, where, what, how. I think that mentality has finally started to catch up with him. Cowboy's been a legend since the WEC days. It's just never not been exciting to watch, right? Just an absolute dynamite fighter with some of the funniest, craziest, most insane finishes you've ever seen. I think this is going to be it for Cowboy. I have a deep sense of sadness about that. I got the opportunity to meet Cowboy in Philadelphia 8 years ago. And I know he's been, I don't know that I'd call him a controversial figure in MMA. I know he gets a little bit of flack for maybe what his personal beliefs are, because he's a little bit loud about them on social media. But I will say, he is the argument to never meeting your heroes, right? They say never meet your heroes. They'll only let you down. I've been a Cowboy fan since the WEC days, going back to, the 2010s. I got to meet him in 2014. Could not have been a nicer human being. Was just a total gentleman. Took pictures with everyone in the gym. He was training with Paul Felder at the time. They had a very real friendship going. They were very cool about everyone hanging out and sort of being a part of that. I'm sad, John Boy. I'm sad because I think this is it.
Do you think he goes out on a good note?
I think the UFC is setting him up to go out on a good note. Joe Lozon has not fought since 2019 when he beat Jonathan Pierce. Before that, he lost 3 in a row to Chris Gritzmacher, Clay Guida, and Stephen Ray. Joe Lozon, another guy who's just been around for fucking ever. You know, Joe Lauzon made his UFC debut my sophomore year of high school, 2006, and starched Jens Pulver. And was for a lot of years, you know, he was one of those guys, you know, he was always a strong prospect. He's another one of those guys always down to fight whoever, wherever, whenever. But he hasn't fought in 3 years. I think that the UFC is hoping that Donald Cowboy Cerrone will get the W. Do I think he will? I don't know, man. 5 losses is a lot in a row, especially when 4 of them are knockouts. You know, you reach a point where your chin's just not going to take that shit anymore. It's just going to put your lights out. I don't know. I think he should be. I think if we were to look at the resumes, look at where they're at, you know, look at who's been more active, I think Cowboy should win. I don't know if he will. I hope he does. I'm hoping against hope that he does. This is a guy who has fought everybody, just everybody. You know, and for a long time, I mean, current champ Charles Oliveira has a loss on his record because he caught Cowboy Cerrone on a bad night. You know, been in the UFC since 2011, has 10 wins by knockout, has 8 losses by knockout. That is a guy who will leave with his shield or on it, as the Greek Spartans used to say. Yeah, I don't know. You know, I mean, he beat Ali Aquinta. He beat Alex Hernandez, who when he beat him was like a highly touted prospect. You know, Alex Hernandez really was when he fought Cowboy. They were talking about him like he was really going to be somebody in the UFC. And Cowboy kind of derailed that. So now you're saying who? You know, beat Mike Perry via armbar. I don't know. I don't even want to comment on the likelihood because I don't want to jinx it. I'll let you talk about the MMA math because I just do not want to jinx this one.
All right. So for this card, I have 3 stars kind of, you know, on the fight card of my favorite bets of the night. And Donald Cerrone is one of them. He's a -170 favorite. Joe Lauzon's +140. I think Cerrone wins this fight everywhere. I think he wins it on the feet. I think he's just as good, if not better, in the grappling department. You did mention he's coming off of 5 losses, but let's look at his 5 losses. Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje, Conor McGregor, Anthony Pettis. The one that, you know, obviously is a little bit sketchy is Alex Morano, but Alex Morano is not a bad welterweight. You know, he's been pretty solid in spots. He caught Cerrone. I don't want to say it was an early stoppage, but it wasn't like super convincing. I saw an interview today with Cowboy Cerrone, and he said this is the first time in a while that he is the soldier in the camp. He was saying that when he was at the BMF ranch, he was the general and the soldier. Like he kind of controlled his schedule and he kind of controlled his training and how he went about things. This is the first time that he didn't train at the BMF ranch. He was in Vegas and he was under the tutelage of another coach. This is going to be the first time his son Danger will be in the arena to watch him fight. He got extremely emotional in the pre-press conference talking about this fight. I do believe that this will be his last fight in the UFC as well, which is definitely, you know, a very, you know, it's a tough thing to look on. It's a sad and emotional thing for a guy who's been there for so long. He's such a staple in the UFC history. I also did get to meet him in 2019 in Las Vegas. Couldn't have met a nicer guy. Super down to earth, you know, didn't act like his shit didn't stink, you know, for somebody with all the accolades to kind of be that way. I'm team Cowboy here all the way. -170. He's going to be one of my locks of the night. I think he gets the job done against Joe Lauzon here. I really hope he does. I hope this really isn't a heart bet, but I think he's going to get this done. I mean, Joe Lauzon's past fights, Jonathan Pierce is not an impressive win whatsoever. Cowboy Cerrone, the no contest that you mentioned was against Nico Price, who's an absolute beast at 170. That was a no contest, and that was a very, very close fight. I know there was an eye poke involved that led to, I think it was ended up as a draw. And then I think Nico Price tested positive for marijuana at the time when marijuana was not legal in the UFC. So that's why it was deemed a no contest. But originally it was a draw. His resume is head and shoulders above Joe Lazone's. I mean, a Chris Grutzmacher loss is not a Conor McGregor loss.
That's true.
You know what I mean? So by that alone, I think the motivation for Cerrone for this camp is I have 5 losses in a row. I need to get my shit together. I'm gonna try and go out in the best way possible. I do think that the UFC and him selected this fight for a reason. I think that he sees, where he can exploit Lazone. And I like him at -170. He's going to be one of my plays for sure. Team Cowboy, maybe a knockout. I could see a knockout. I could see a head kick, kind of his MO, kind of what made him, famous. I believe he has the most finishes in UFC history.
Yes.
Which is, that's nothing to sleep on. So this guy is a potent finisher. Ally Aquinta and Alex Hernandez, those are his last 2 wins. Those are good wins. Those 2 guys would be steep favorites over Joe Lazone. That's for damn sure. So I'm going to side with Cowboy here. I feel very confident at -173, regardless of kind of how he's looked.
When we talk about, we talk about different styles of human being that make up an MMA fighter, right? We compare different mentalities. There was an interview that Donald Cerrone gave some years ago where they asked him what he would do if the UFC or if MMA didn't exist, and he said, "I'd be the guy at the bar hitting on your girlfriend so that I could bait you into a fight in the parking lot." And he means it. Probably to his own detriment. I don't know the statistics on it, but I'd imagine he's one of the guys who's taken the most short notice fights in history, probably to his own detriment, right? Taking short notice fights, stepping in there on a month, a week's notice just to fight whoever, is probably what derailed him from really having serious training camps, 12 weeks to get ready and legitimately make a run for the strap in the UFC. And that's one goal he'll never accomplish is having UFC gold around his waist. But just what an exciting career, right? You always knew it didn't matter if they texted Cowboy and said, "You want to fight Saturday?" He would get in his RV with his wife and he would drive the RV to where your fight was at, drinking Bud Heavies on the way, listening to good old outlaw country music. He'd probably stop off in a canyon somewhere so he could do a flip on his ATV and put it on Instagram. And in all of that too, one of the things worth noting is that BMF ranch that he has down there has been a resource for a lot of up and coming fighters. He's always given back to guys coming behind him. I know he did a ton of work with Paul Felder when Paul was just getting into the UFC. And I think those two still have a friendship to this day because of it. Cowboy Cerrone is truly just a 1 in a million human being. I will likely be weeping on my couch on Saturday when this fight ends and Cowboy takes off his gloves and leaves them in the cage. I maybe take a live video of me just sobbing on the couch. It is what it is. Grown men can cry too, and that's all right. It is what it is. No judgment here. That's the main card. It took us an hour to get through the main card, John Boy. Anything on the prelims worth talking about? What do you like?
I won't get too much into it. I'm just going to go down on the 2 fights that I've starred that I'm going to be betting. I'll make it relatively quick as well. Randy Brown, Chaos Williams. This is going to be the main prelim fight. This is going to be the fight that entices you to buy the pay-per-view. This is the headline prelim bout. Randy Brown is a even underdog and Chaos Williams is -120. I'm betting Randy Brown here. He's one of my favorite dog plays on the card. I like him a lot. I touted him on Twitter and I said, I bet it when it was +105. The line has moved a little bit since then. And I saw somebody responded on my Twitter post and said, I said, Randy Brown is the better fighter. So I'm going to be betting him at plus money. And somebody responded and said, oh, well, Andre Fili was the better fighter last week and he lost. Yeah, but Andre Fili wasn't plus money. So when you're going to give me a guy who's an underdog, who I think is the outright better fighter, I'm going to take it 9 times out of 10. And in this case, I'm going with Randy Brown, even money against Chaos Williams. And the last one, I'll jump down one more time to Marcus Rajirio de Lima and Blagoy Ivanov. I believe this is the only heavyweight bout on the card. And I'm going to be my last and final third star is Blagoy Ivanov minus 150. I think this is mislined. I think Blagoy Ivanov should be a higher favorite than this. This is also a situation where Marcos Rogerio de Lima will probably win the first round, but after that, he's going to taper off and Blagoy Ivanov will coast. Blagoy Ivanov minus 150, Randy Brown even money, Donald Cerrone minus 170. That is the John Boy parlay for UFC 274.
Boom. Done. Wow. That's a marathon. Talking about that fight card. That was a marathon. But we're pros. We're not done yet. Let's talk about last Saturday when I watched a fight card in the Tampa Bay International Airport with a 3-hour delay to get on a fucking Frontier Airlines fight. There's one fight nobody can win. The fight against Frontier Airlines. We're all losing that fight. I lost it on Saturday, but a nice little side effect of losing that fight was I was able to take our legal department's laptop, pop that sucker open, get ESPN Plus on there, and watch those fights. Rob Font, Chito Vera, the John Boy pick turned out to be 125% correct. Chito Vera won a decision over Rob Font. What was interesting is, and I saw the statistic, I didn't write it down. I wish I had, but this is one of the few times, and it's maybe the biggest differential ever. I want to say that Rob Font landed almost 70 significant strikes higher than Chito Vera and still lost the fight. That was a fight. That was a fight to watch. Number one, did you think the decision was correct?
Oh yeah. I mean, absolutely. I think anytime you drop a guy and, you know, it's visibly obvious that he's very hurt in a fight, I think that does steal you and win you the round. You're right. This is the highest discrepancy in strikes where the person who landed more, I believe it was around 70 more significant strikes landed, ends up losing the fight. The one fight, though, that I did mention on the last pod that it resembles this a little bit was the Jose Aldo fight between Jose Aldo and Rob Font, where Rob Font also landed, he doubled Jose Aldo on the strike count, and he ended up losing that fight as well because he just didn't wear the shots right. When Aldo landed, you know, it was, you could tell that it had more of an impact. Yeah, man, that was kind of how it worked. Font would kind of coast and he'd win like the first 3 minutes to 4 minutes of the round. And then in the last minute of the round, Chito would, and Chito was hitting him with some big shots. Like these weren't like little jabs that were catching him. He caught him with a high kick. He caught him with a flush kick in the 4th round. And then in the 5th round, he had him hurt again. I thought in the 3rd, or I think he hurt him in the 2nd round, at the end of the 2nd round with like 10 seconds left. And I honestly do think that stole the round for Chito. Chito did the same thing in the 3rd, and then he did it again in the 4th. I think you could have made an argument that in the 4th or the 3rd or 4th round that it could have been stopped. I don't think that it necessarily was the right decision. But I do think the rightful winner was Chito Vera.
I agree with you. I think the rightful winner was Chito Vera, primarily because of the drop in the 2nd and the drop in the 3rd. There was an argument, though, that drop came, I want to say there were seconds left when that drop came.
In the 2nd round, yeah, that was like last 10 seconds.
Last 10 seconds. And for the first 4 minutes and 50 seconds, Rob Font was getting busy on the feet.
Yeah.
But it brings up an interesting age-old MMA question that dates back to George St. Pierre versus Johnny Big Rig Hendricks. Now, I don't know if you remember that one. George St. Pierre wins a decision and wins a decision with a absolutely bloodied face, and people are up in arms that Johnny Hendricks had done more damage. Look at GSP's face. That's insane. And at the time, the response was, and this is a response that, Jesus, this had to be 7 years ago, I put on Twitter, there is no codified scoring in MMA for damage sustained, right? Now we get to this one, and this is a little bit of a different scenario because Cheeto did drop Font twice. But at the end of the fight, did he drop him 3 times?
Dropped him in the 4th as well.
Forgive me, I was in an airport. Waiting for a Frontier Airlines flight. I don't know if you heard. I was waiting for a Frontier flight out of Florida, kind of like Snake Plissken and Escape from New York. I'm just taking any way out I can get. But, you know, look, Rob Font's face looks like a well-worn catcher's mitt, right? I mean, he's just bloodied, beaten, swollen, but he's outscored Chito Vera by 70 significant strikes. I think may have set the record for most strikes thrown in a fight in UFC history.
It was, I think it was second behind Holloway, Calvin Kadar.
Speaking of heavy duty fights,
it actually might have been third. I think Holloway has both. He has Holloway Cater and Holloway Ortega was second.
Sure. So at least in their own weight class then, right? The most strikes thrown ever in that weight class.
Yeah, that's I think that's fair at 135, right?
Yeah, 135. The question that I have for you then is it time for the MMA, and I know we talk about MMA scoring a lot, is it time to rethink how we score damage sustained? And if so, part B of that question, how do you then deal with, you know, a guy who's, you know, just maybe he's a little bit pasty, so he's showing marks heavier. Maybe he's a bleeder, so he's bleeding more, versus a guy like Chito Vera, who is apparently carved out of solid granite and just will not bleed. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, no, so I understand this is where it gets a little bit dicey, where you're kind of going, you know, this is at basically the judge's discretion of kind of how they are going to see this, but kind of how I see it and how I would score it and how I did score it was kind of the damage sustained and the visual. I mean, when you get dropped in a fight and you get right back up, it's a different story than when Rob Font's getting dropped and he's on Bambi legs and then he covers up for the last minute of the fight. And there's like there's a 30 to 40 second window where you're like, oh, this could get stopped. You could see that the damage sustained it had a huge effect. I mean, when Font went into his corner in the 5th round, his corner was like, do you want to keep going? The damage was racking up and it was clearly, you know, affecting him. I understand what you're saying though, because it's like, how are you going to judge a drop where the guy recuperates, hops right back up again? You know, so I think that the visual of kind of being on Bambi legs and fully and losing consciousness is obviously going to be, you know, overwhelmingly more persuasive for a judge to score them for that round when you're hurting the guy that badly. I don't disagree with the judges though in this. I mean, I think that this was judged correctly. I think it was a 48-47, 48-47, 49-46. You know, Font won the 2 rounds that he didn't get dropped in. And I feel like that's fair. I had it 48-46 or 48-47 as well, but I could see 49-46 because in that 5th round, Chito hurt him again. He didn't drop him, but it was another one of those ones where it was like, oh no, like, you know, Font's getting lit up. So yeah, I think the judges handled this one correctly. I think the rightful winner got his hand raised. But it's one of those things where, you know, you're going at the judge's discretion and kind of what they feel is, you know, the more meaningful damage, the more meaningful output. You know, that's another thing that makes it tough to judge a fight.
Well, you know, look, John, at the end of the day, I'm trying to inject some controversy into that last fight card because everything in that fight card was so perfectly well done, well executed, well judged. I know that from my vantage point, I don't know if I told you, I was waiting for a flight in the Tampa International Airport, Frontier Airlines, excellent airline. I'm looking for something to spice up that card, right? Because nothing else went wrong, right? Andre Arlovsky won. Surely the Pitbull won fair and square. You had that 30-27 Arlovsky, right?
Yeah, no, that was one where we should look into collusion. We should look into if somebody was being paid off. This is another, Sal D'Amato strikes again. When you hear Sal D'Amato as the third judge on a split decision, just expect to be fucked. 29-28 for Andre Arlovsky is absolute highway robbery. If you want to score the second round for Andre, I could maybe see an argument for Andre winning the second round, but the first and third round really couldn't be more clear from a Jake Collier standpoint. Out of 14 media judges, all 14 had Jake Collier. Half of them had 30-27. The other half had 29-28 for Collier. That was highway robbery. I laid off that fight because it was one of those ones that I honestly had an inclination that it was going to go to a decision. And Andre Arlovsky is known for squeaking out some of these just absolutely absurd split decisions and these fights they're honestly sort of hard fights to judge, but this one wasn't. This was one of the clearer ones. I feel for Jake Collier. That sucks that you have to lose your win bonus because two absolute morons who shouldn't be allowed in another venue or another fight are gonna strike again because an athletic commission doesn't have the balls to ban them. But that's disgusting. I mean, that was clear as day. Everybody who was conscious and aware of watching that fight knew that Jake Collier won that fight. But here we go again. I'm like, the famous words of Nate Diaz. I'm not surprised. Or Nick Diaz, sorry, or Nate. No, Nate.
That was Nate.
I'm
Nate,
not surprised.
After choking out Conor McGregor, looked into the camera and said, "I'm not surprised, motherfucker."
And that suits kind of how I feel about this. I'm not surprised. Sal D'Amato and the inconsistent Athletic State Commission of Las Vegas strikes again.
The Nevada State Athletic Commission should be really, really doing some soul searching. I'm not going to say too much about this one. If you didn't watch the fight, don't bother going back and watching it. I will end any speculation. Jake Collier won that fight 30-27 by my score. He was a clear decision winner. I'm not sure. And look, I don't want to take anything away from Andre Arlovsky, former UFC heavyweight champion, a great career, but to celebrate that win like he did, makes me wonder about his mental health, or moral compass, one of the two. Yeah. That is incompetent at best, malicious at worst, to say that he beat Jake Collier. Jake Collier won that fight 30-27. And it is just another check in the category of the need to overhaul the way mixed martial arts is scored. It's just insane. But turns out Dave Chappelle's got great takedown defense.
Yes. And apparently his security is very well trained in BJJ as well.
Listen, Nate Diaz told us years ago, don't be skipping jujitsu. Don't be out in the parking lot playing touch butt. And I think Dave Chappelle's security team must have been listening closely. We like to bring you MMA news and news that's tangentially related to MMA. And somebody on Dave Chappelle's security team figured out a Kimura or an omoplata. They figured out something to bend a would-be assailant's arm in the absolute wrong direction, and had him looking like, I heard it said earlier, looking like Mojo Jojo after the Powerpuff Girls whooped his ass last night while performing in, I think Los Angeles. I don't know if he was a fan or a detractor or just somebody who wanted to be famous. Our legal department tells me that the would-be assailant is a rapper who had a track titled Dave Chappelle. I don't know if that track is positive or negative towards Chappelle, but he brushed the stage last night, tried to shoot on Chappelle's legs, Chappelle with some pretty good takedown defense, framed off on the head and the shoulder and managed to avoid sustaining any damage. The guy had what would later be found out to be a fake gun and a knife on him as well. I don't know that they knew they were fake at the time. And I know that the ass whooping that he took was very real. And this brought up for me, I don't know, John, if you were a fan of Chappelle's show back in the day.
Absolutely.
Right, because who wasn't? That is, for my money, that is the greatest skit comedy show ever made. Dave had a bit called "When Keeping It Real Goes Wrong." This is when keeping it real goes very wrong. And the MMA world sounded off loudly today about it, including Henner Gracie, who offered Dave Chappelle some free jujitsu lessons if he wants them. Wow, though. Wow. When our sport meets reality, it's an interesting thing to see sometimes. And speaking of things that are stranger than fiction, Nate Diaz might fight Khamzat Chimaev.
Yeah, there is that leaked photo that's going around right now on social media with basically in Dana White's command center or his command room in the UFC Apex Arena, where basically him, Hunter Campbell, and Sean Shelby kind of, game plan and map out future fights. The board has a bunch of fights that allegedly are going to happen or come to fruition. So yeah, Nate Diaz, Khamzat Chimaev. I mean, I don't know if Nate Diaz was sleeping with, some of Dana's family members or kind of what vendetta Dana holds to him personally, but Khamzat Chimaev would absolutely eviscerate Nate Diaz. The off chance that he doesn't blow his ACL out while walking into the arena would kind of be Nate's, only shot. That sounds, I don't even know if I'd want to see that fight, if I'm being completely honest with you.
Look, I am want to have fighters that I will really go to the bottom of the sea for. But if you're a fan of the sport, there are just some fighters that are just your guys from day one. I've mentioned Cowboy Cerrone is one of mine. Nate Diaz is another one of mine. Him and his brother Nick, the original bad boys of MMA, starting brawls at press conferences, showing up with baggy jeans and untied Timbs on when everyone else is wearing a suit, talking shit to every single person out there. Nate Diaz being the one that stopped the meteoric rise of Conor McGregor with a rear naked choke. I am Diaz Army till the day I die. It is always War Diaz. All of that being said, I really hope that fight does not happen. This is the last fight on Nate Diaz's contract. It is likely that he is done in the UFC after this fight. I can see no justifiable reason for him to fight Khamzat Chimaev. I cannot find a justifiable reason for those two to fight in a locked cage. I can't.
Yeah. I mean, I guess essentially, obviously, the UFC is looking at it like you're pouring gasoline on an already bright, huge burning fire in Khamzat Chimaev. So I guess this could give him a little bit more of a push than he kind of already has. Nate and Nick are famous for never turning down fights. Although they might change that game plan for this one. I don't see that being competitive. I don't really see how it makes a ton of sense either. Other than the fact that, like I said, it's going to be pouring fire on an already really, bright future prospect in the UFC. There's better fights to be made for both of those guys. So, we'll see if that happens. I have a feeling that we're not going to see Nate for a while.
Look, I think if Twitter is any indication, Nate Diaz has already said he'll take that fight. Khamzat Chimaev responded and said, "Let's go, skinny." So neither one of those men is bailing on that fight right now. I don't know what that means for the future, whether or not it's really going to happen. But I think too, and look, is the UFC paying me? Not yet. Should they be? Maybe. as an advisor, as a consultant, sure, I think that's reasonable. And if I was their consultant, what I would say to them is you have the bright shining star that is Khamzat Chimaev, the seat filler, the pay-per-view filler, Khabib Nurmagomedov, but with heavy hands, and a strong stand-up game. To me, it's risk versus reward here. Yeah, you might get a few extra pay-per-view buys because people will go to the bottom of the ocean for Nate Diaz. But what do you do when Khamzat goes to shoot a shot on Nate Diaz against the cage and shoots it awkwardly and tweaks his knee, or tweaks his shoulder, or does any one of the things that can happen when two human beings take their shirts off and decide to fight each other in a locked chain link fence cage, right? Things can go wrong even when you win. So what are you going to do when it's a medical suspension, or when he tweaks an injury that's just never quite right again, and this absolutely flames it out, right? Is he going to beat Nate Diaz? Yes. 9.5 times out of 10, Khamzat Chimaev is going to starch Nate Diaz. Is that going to stop MMA karma from coming in and fucking up his knee, or dislocating a finger, or breaking a toe, or having him land weird on his head, or any of the other things that can go wrong? No. Why would you risk it for a fight that makes utterly no sense, especially on the heels of the borderline fight of the year candidate that he had with Gilbert Burns? Capitalize on this stock and have him fight people it makes sense for him to fight. And I agree with you. I have to believe that the Diaz brothers must have had themselves a sexually consensual but depraved evening with some member of Dana White's family. I have to believe it was a close member of that family, because Dana White has never been a Diaz brother fan, which is probably one of the reasons I am such a big fan of the Diaz brothers, is they were always the thorn in the side of the UFC. They always wanted to be contrarian, always wanted to start shit. This to me is not a fun fight to watch because of the likely outcome, but it's also a dumb decision. I just don't think it makes sense. But we get an indication that list may be legitimate, because on that list was also Sugar Sean O'Malley versus Pedro Munoz, and that fight was announced.
Yep, that fight has been announced July 2nd. UFC, fight week, the biggest month for the UFC, where they try and put on their biggest pay-per-view event in July. This is going to be Sean O'Malley's, I don't want to say it's his first top 10 guy, because he did fight Chito Vera. I don't know if Chito was a top 10 guy at that point in time.
But certainly top 10 caliber.
Yeah, absolutely. And he definitely is. He might even be a top 5 caliber type of guy right now.
I would agree with that.
But he also did decimate Sean O'Malley with a first round finish. That fight was announced. I'm trying to think if there was anything else that was announced. I did see that they announced Curtis Blades, Tom Aspinall.
Yeah.
As a heavyweight main event in London for the when they go back to London.
Yeah. They had Stipe Jones on that leaked graphic. They did have Stipe Jones, which I know they're targeting for maybe sometime this summer. I think they're putting the screws to Stipe to maybe be ready earlier than the September prospect that he had said. I don't know. That's just it just makes no sense to me. I can see no justifiable reason to do that. But in other great upcoming fight news, Paulo Costa has been on a tear on Twitter, as he is wont to do, using homophobic slurs, tweeting out photoshopped pictures of Rose Namajunas on Dana White's lap.
I don't know if that's photoshopped.
As soon as I said it, I actually remembered back to it. I think that might be a legitimate photo. A very young Rose Namajunas sitting on the lap of Dana White. Take that with whatever you will. And then also a picture of Edward Furlong in American History X with a shaved head, where he played a neo-Nazi, where Paulo Costa insinuated that it was a photo of Rose Namajunas with her shaved head. And all of his bad publicity on Twitter that Paulo Costa has had, the UFC has decided to punish him by forcing him to fight Luke Rockhold.
Yeah, they did.
I guess that makes sense.
They did just announce, that fight is in the making. That's an interesting fight, I guess.
Is it?
I don't want to say I don't want to see it, because that would be a lie. I'm definitely going to tune in for it.
I'm gonna watch it.
Yeah, I'm going to watch it as well. I mean, I don't know how much sense it makes in the standings, kind of just with how inactive Rockhold is, where he kind of just like fights and then he disappears for 3 years. But with that being said, it's a decent matchup. Costa will probably be a slight favorite, but if you can deal with some of the shit that Paulo Costa says on Twitter, it is a decent chuckle with some of the shit that he does get himself into. I don't want to recommend him as a Twitter follow, but I follow him, and I get some good laughs out of it. I'll say that much.
I follow Paulo Costa as well. I've been known to just really get lost in the web that he spins on the socials. But as an official podcast stance, given some of the shit that he says on there, we cannot endorse him as a follow. Our legal department has informed us that we do not endorse, nor do we endorse any of his tweets, nor do we endorse him as a follow. However, if you want to see a train wreck on social media, I can think of places that I would point you, and that's one account that I'd point you to.
Very fair.
So I guess he's going to fight Luke Rockhold, who is a former male model, former boyfriend of, I think, Demi Lovato, and former loser of a title to a blind man. Got beaten up by a blind man. So now he's going to fight juice to the gills, possible son of Vitor Belfort, Paulo Costa. Possible son of Vitor Belfort. That seems to have fizzled. I don't know if it's true or not. Haven't seen a 23andMe yet, but we'll be on the lookout for that. And maybe we'll do a deep dive of that. Maybe one night sitting at a official sponsor of the 10-8 podcast, Miller's Ale House. Maybe we'll order ourselves some garlic parm wings, a couple of Hank's root beers, sit down there at Miller's and do a little deep dive into the genealogy of Paulo Costa.
Hey, I've spent worse nights than doing that.
I've had worse nights at Miller's Ale House. John Boy, anything else before we get out of here for this week?
I think that wraps it up, my guy.
Well then, guys, as always, stay true, stay loyal, call your mother, tell your lover. We'll see you next week.
Peace.